Oh, sure. It's at least it's 1080p again. I didn't make that mistake. And it says we are live. I'm
live.
alive. Hey. Welcome.
Welcome to Friday.
Yes. And that means that it is another edition of Bean Streaming with not Cobus and not Darko. So for those who get confused, if you get confused with the name, just put up your hand and we'll just do this. And then you will not be as confused anymore. We can just swap things around.
Exactly. Hey, and good afternoon. Well, is it afternoon? It's good morning
still. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And also, why aren't you in bed for some of our viewers? Because I know that some people get up early.
Time to get to bed.
So, coffee is ready. And what are we doing today, Darko? Because I do believe it's not keyboard hands.
It's not keyboard jazz hands. It's us talking tech again. It's kind of a get out of jail free card because we found out that you guys like when we talk about technology in general. So we decided, hey, let's abuse that and let's talk about some various technology topics. We have no specific things to talk about. Like it's not today we're gonna talk.
I got one.
Okay, there we go. It's not like today we're gonna talk about X and Y. It's just basically what comes to our mind. But also do free feel to ask us questions in the chat, and we will love to comment on those things. So again, anything that's technology related, cloud related, nerdy, geeky, whatever you like, we would love to talk to you about that as well. So, Cobus, what is your topic? I wasn't.
Right, not that
one.
Sorry, I quickly want to pop that in there. So I have now, this is I think the third time I've had this discussion with someone, and the request is as follows. Hey, Cobus, we know you are very embedded in the DevOps community. You do a lot of DevOps work. How do I interview someone for a DevOps position? Yes.
Interesting.
Which is, So, just give me 2 seconds talking about various tech topics because I cannot talk and type for some reason.
That's fine.
Oh, there we go.
So, what would be the DevOps interview questions for you, or how would you try to determine if somebody is knowledgeable in DevOps or not?
My number one go-to question is very, very simple. Tell me, in the last 2 years, what did you break? How did it break? And how did you fix it?
Oh, that's very cool.
Very simple. So why do you think that's a good question? At least for me. Obviously, there might be better questions, but specifically the way I found it is it's a super useful question.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to like this specific question, what did you do in the last year? What did you break and how did you fix it? I think it brings a great point on understanding the troubleshooting skills. First of all, understanding how you can troubleshoot what you broke. Secondly, understanding what is it you built, because if something is very, I wouldn't say exotic, but very, very interesting, this means that you as an engineer have the creativity to build amazing things. And as this thing people call a DevOps engineer, which doesn't exist by the way, is something that we want to make sure that you're capable in architecting things, and we can discuss about the existence or non-existence of DevOps engineers all day long, right? But I think the point here is that we're looking in creativity in a technical engineering sense about or also this was told to me by my colleague back in Dublin. He told me, like, I think I mentioned this already, an engineer is not a degree, it's a state of mind. It's how much you're excited to see certain pieces of technology or do technology. This is what makes you a good engineer or a bad engineer. So I think that's very cool. And so what are the best answers you got on that one? I'm really
so here's part of the reason I asked that question is, firstly, it gives you an opening to tell me about anything basically that you've done in the past few months or years. Secondly, it's a very nice filter criteria, because if somebody comes to me and says, listen, didn't really break anything in the last year, we are working with computers, that immediately tells me that you might not have been working on anything. You might not have been pushing yourself. You might not have been adding systems. You were just churning through busy work. So that kind of like makes me think like, well, what's going on there? The other reason is that is the breaking part is super interesting, because when somebody tells you what they broke, you can dig into why did it break, what assumptions did they have that then didn't pan out, wasn't true, and then also very importantly is how did they fix it and what did they learn? Because those two are probably the most important aspects of any kind of like SRE, DevOpsy, automation, cloud engineer role, is that you're going to be changing things, you're going to be making mistakes, things are going to break. How do you go about fixing them, and how do you learn from that? Because I'll rather take someone with no experience that can learn and actually figure things out than someone with a lot of experience that is incapable of learning new things.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and I think that's a very useful skill to have, and especially even in DevOps or any kind of engineering role, having the ability to troubleshoot things, to fix things you're broken, but also be engaged enough to try new things, because we all know, I'm not sure what's the proper term for those people that are kind of like IT bookworms. I wouldn't call them bookworms. IT, basically they have entered the IT world in 1996, and they're still in 1996 because I have my big old server here that does everything for me, and I'm used to that, and I'm not changing that at all. So I think flexibility in the modern world is something that's very important, and this also goes to like, how do we define a modern application? A modern application requires a modern engineer. So modern engineer is exactly what you said. So that's a very cool thing.
Let me actually put this on a banner, because this was an awesome term that I heard previously.
Oh, okay. Do that. While you're doing that, one of the things I used to work in premium support in AWS, and I was interviewing premium support engineers for the role of supporting our DevOps services. So they were not DevOps engineers, but they were people who were supposed to support code pipelines and all the code services and ECS and OpsWorks and CloudFormation and all those things. So one of the questions I would have for those people is, how would you deploy 100 servers, right? And I'll start with 10. How would you deploy 10 servers? Okay. How would you deploy 100 servers? And then how would you deploy 1,000,000 servers, right? Be completely open about whatever you think about it. Be inventive. Give me, what would you do? And this is usually where people, like, and if this is where you see if they don't have experience, but experience is okay. But even if they don't have creativity, I want to hear this, like, I want to make a script that does blah, 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 blah. And this is where I see this, I know, I think me running this would help a lot on building something that I want and make it fail-proof and all that stuff. So to answer the question from Denny, what do these support people do? The person mentally retired at 30. Yeah, that's a problem. That is a very big problem. When people at their 30s, actually at the year of 30, they just decided, you know what, I've learned all I should learn, and I'm not budging from anything I'm doing. And that's the big problem here. Oh, no, for sure.
No, definitely.
So to answer the question from Danny, what do support people do? Support people are working with supporting customers from AWS. So anytime you open up a support ticket, holding it up. Anytime you open up a support ticket at AWS, and a technical support ticket, somebody from the support team will answer you. Now, the support team is a team of highly skilled engineers, and these people are capable of answering hard technical questions. And they have some insights into AWS services. How do they run? We have some internal tools as well. But basically, these are the people you're going to poke when you're, my code deployments has failed and I don't know why. And then you reach out to us and say, hey, why has this happened? Give me the deployment ID, and we kind of look into it. So you can get a lot of good information from them. And I mean, the premium support service is paid. I think it's like $25 a month. But I would say it's worth every dollar.
No, definitely.
A lot of money of that. A lot of bang.
I mean, I've actually seen companies where they had no developers, and then what they do is they pop a question in there saying, "Listen, this is what we're trying to do," and then the support person says, "No, hold on a second. You probably need to look at this, and this." Then what they do is they take those 4 responses and say, "Okay, cool, log 4 more tickets," and then they went through that entire process, basically built up a system and an app with no programming knowledge, all from support, and it's free.
It works for them for sure. Love the PC, Darko.
Yeah.
This is okay. I'm cheating here a bit. So this is a monitor, a Commodore monitor. So it's not even a CRT. It's a CRT, but it's not like a PC monitor. You cannot run native resolutions on it. It's not that. It's basically right now running a Raspberry Pi, and I'm running a Raspberry Pi on it, and it uses composite video. So that's why it's not. I cannot boot like proper things here. Like cannot use VGA and whatever. So the PC there is just for show. It is actually a working PC, Windows 98 one, but I love this running it on a Raspberry Pi, so it makes it a bit easier. So this is my new background noise thing, and I'm going to be milking it as much as I can.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. Sorry, I'm just quickly pasting things here because I had a very good idea for our discussion today, which is tackling DevOps interview questions. Because what I did is I Googled and my search string was top DevOps positions, top DevOps position interview questions. And the first thing I hit was a.
So you want us to get fired or what? Like, we don't know how to answer these things.
Not at all. I'm already loving the 10 questions because it'll be interesting. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm not going to be sharing my screen because what I would love us to do is to take the questions one by one and then we work through them. Given that Darko and myself both have a lot of DevOps experience and opinions about them and very strong opinions, I would love to see what this site, the opinion is around DevOps because I'm already like one of the questions I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fight. So it's good.
Perfect. Let's do that. But before we go to that, I have a question for you, Cobus. I received this question a few days ago when I did something regarding DevOps, right? A talk around DevOps. Somebody asked me like, is NoOps going to replace DevOps? Now, at first I thought it was a joke. But what is NoOps? Like, does that thing exist? I mean,
you can argue that it exists in the sense if you look at, it's not quite the same saying no ops as no code. If you look at, for example, Amazon Honeycode. So just for those not familiar, Honeycode is a service that allows you to basically use a spreadsheet, drag and drop components and build a mobile application without writing any code. You literally drag and drop components and at the end of the day, you click a button and say, boom, there it goes, it's out. You could argue that has got no ops. Similarly, you could argue that, for example, if you use AWS Amplify and that deploys both your front end and your back end, there's no operations there to a certain extent.
But because monitoring always, right? There's monitoring.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like there always is operations. Like,
I don't think
what you're doing serverless, and then he says, I think he meant serverless. Yeah, even with serverless, there's operations. No matter how serverless you are, you still need to monitor things. And operations is basically just understanding the state of your system. That's part of operations, right? Operations is not rebooting and restarting and patching servers. Right? It doesn't have to be that.
No.
So okay.
Yeah,
I get you. I get this point, right?
Yeah.
I would say no ops is low ops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me quickly just put another one in here. Sorry, /1 here because I want to get back to that one again. Okay, cool. Okay. So we are going to start going through the top 10 questions. And what I'll do, just give me a second. I'll pop them in the banner. This will be quicker because it's just copy and paste.
Just answer the question from Mookie Monkey. Mookie Monkey, and hello and welcome back to the stream. We've seen you before. Given your experience as developers, why you work for Amazon instead of doing your own stuff? There's a massive difference between knowing how to do a job and running a company or doing your own stuff. So that's like, I like being an engineer. I like doing tech stuff. I like, playing around with technology. I don't like running a company. I don't like having to worry about my own business. I like getting my salary once a month, and I'll geek out as much as possible. So let me put it that way.
So I was on the completely other side of that because I did consulting and did that via my own company, which, yes, I have got a credit card that says Blue Battleship as the company name.
Wow.
Yes. That's wait for it, my vehicle for my work. Yes, I do things like that. Okay. But also seriousness. So basically what I did was that I had worked for a number of years and I got to a point where I can solve stuff. As in throw problems that companies are having at me and then I help them solve it. Those problems tended to be, how do we move to the cloud? How do we make our teams go faster? How do we automate? CI/CD, config management, just in general, make stuff better, sort out our architecture, those kind of things. So it was very fuzzily defined. It wasn't those specific things. Now, Having done that for a while, that's great. But always part of that has, in my experience, has been like, I want to show people how to do things. I want to teach them. I want to, help more people, but at scale. Yeah. Because one of the big things is, if you look at our industry, there is so much work out there and so many companies struggling with these things. If I can rather somehow reach 1,000 people and help them get the basics right, literally just, even if it's just go figure out how to do a build job so it automatically builds. That for some people is a massive step forward to what they currently have. If you can start doing that, then as an industry as a whole, you can start moving that level of skills up slowly. And that honestly is what attracted me to Amazon, is like being able to do this kind of teaching and enablement of others at scale. Because I was already running a local DevOps user group for 5 years now, I think. Also doing DevOps Days Cape Town, so that really helps. But I mean, it's one of those like, how do I reach people at scale? And yes, I agree with you, Darko. The admin of running companies is sometimes interesting. All the tax, invoicing, keeping all the invoices, people that don't pay, etc., etc. Luckily today, touch wood, I have not had any customers that did not pay me, or clients rather. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, right? So, I mean, I would avoid all of that. I like the fact just being able to just engineer stuff and geek out and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of the reason. Okay, so let's get on with the questions, Cobus.
Yes. So what I want to do is, let me pop the first question on here. Banners, and are you ready? Dun, dun, dun. Wait, sorry, I want to actually number them as well. Q1, here we go. There we go. And go.
I don't know. I really don't. Like, I never worked in an agile methodology, so I know what DevOps is, but I wouldn't know like what is the difference. What is agile? Like, I never worked in a part of that kind of a team.
So it is interesting. So they give this to me feels like it's a person touching on the fact that DevOps is also a cultural change and an organizational, structural, and way of doing change. So it kind of feels like they might be hinting at that. But I mean, as a very first question, this is, to me, is super interesting, because it means that we've struck to the problem of what DevOps is at the moment, as in terms of perception in the market, which is like Agile, it's the silver bullet you need to rub. And I use this in a lot of talks, is like, rub some DevOps on it and that'll make it better. So I think this is it.
This is a fair point, because like yesterday or 2 days ago, I was asked like, does Agile benefit from DevOps, right? And my thought is like, it's very difficult to have Agile without DevOps, right? You can, but it's super, super difficult. And now Agile, so my understanding of Agile, right? And I've never worked in an Agile environment. I know what being Agile means, but like the proper Agile terminology and methods, it's just a fast way of actually enabling developers to quickly produce software, right? Produce high quality software with a lot of experimentation. And if you're not practicing DevOps, doing Agile is very difficult. If you have to cut a ticket for somebody to build your software, that's not Agile, right?
Yeah,
that's throwing Agile at a wall and seeing if it sticks, but it's not, right? So,
yeah, no, I've seen that before as well. So it's one of those things where Agile, for me, and I've worked at a lot of companies that practiced Agile and had Scrum Masters and had like Agile coaches, etc., etc. The challenge that I've seen with it is that a lot of people seem to think that Agile is, here's the list of things you need to do.
Okay.
Follow these 10 steps to lose 5 kilograms in 1 week. Kind of promotional, if we do this, if we go through these routines without understanding it, which effectively comes down to cargo cult.
Got it.
They think that'll make them better. The other thing to understand is where Agile also originated, which is, if you start looking at what it's trying to solve, is like, it's trying to make incremental improvements and reviewable deliverables every, let's say, second week, or however you're going about that. And that often works for a lot of sprints. Yeah. So that works very well if you're in a, like, let's say, an agency type setup where you're working with clients, where you're building websites and you're giving them something every little bit and you want to show them progress. Also works with certain businesses where that is possible, but often, especially with the slightly more interesting problems that you're dealing with, 2 weeks is not that much time to actually make progress to solve specific problems and things. So that's kind of what I've found is a little bit like meh. So,
I mean, it's all great and giving a proper methodology to develop things, but again, even I mean, I think with Amazon, we work in Agile sort of way. We have sprints and all those things. The development teams have sprints, and that's all fine. But again, none of that works unless you have a proper set of culture, practices, and tools to enable you to do proper Agiles. Otherwise, it's just, again, developing software relatively fast and just waiting on a ticket then, right? And I think Agile without a DevOps culture around it sucks. Right. I mean, I'm welcome to my TED Talk, and it's. I think that's just bad. So, person who has never
getting back. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm also not a big fan of it. It's similar. Like if you want to take it to the extreme, people talking about like ITIL v4, which is I think a 900-page guide how to do enterprise level Agile, which is
at one point.
Wow. It's that also makes like so basically. And also, here's the thing and this is what grinds me a little bit with Agile, is you get these Agile consultants that went and did certification. And here's the kicker. You do that certification, it's a very small test that you write. Yeah. And then every year you have to renew that certification. So if I told you certification is a way to showcase that you know something and you want to, renew it, what would you expect the process to be?
I don't know, taking the certification exam or whatever, right?
Possibly some kind of questions, some kind of mechanism to validate that you stay valid and all that.
Yeah.
No, just a credit card swipe. Indefinitely. Every year, as long as you swipe, your certification stays valid.
Wow, that sucks, man.
So, and also then part of that is that I've seen a lot of these Agile coaches that don't necessarily have a lot of industry experience. And then they come in as a coach. They spend a year and a half with super high consulting rates, changing the company. And then they move on again. Because in the tech industry, moving after a year and a half is not seen as something bad. The problem is changing the company culture and actually having an impact. A year and a half is a very short period for that. Absolutely. So I've seen a lot of them come and go, and it's just like you're paying a lot of money. Things change. There's whole buckets full of stickies with pens and things, and we go through all of the things. And at the end of the day, did the code get better? Did we get more things out? And the answer usually is nope. So I'm very careful. There have obviously been success stories.
Absolutely. When it comes to DevOps and Agile consultancy, I have a whole opinion on that because I get asked like, hey, can you come and talk to my company for an hour and convince them on DevOps? I'm like, no. I can tell you the benefits of it, but nobody will do it in 1 hour. Like transformation of a company from a non-DevOps type approach or even non-Agile to something like that takes a long time. Right. So, but I see a few comments here from people. Culture is absolutely very important for both DevOps and Agile. And I think from this discussion, my assertion, what is a fundamental difference between DevOps and Agile is the fact that Agile is just a software development methodology that you release something in a certain amount of time and not, spend 6 months or 4 months or 3 months developing a piece of software and publishing it, hopefully. Now, DevOps fits into that amazingly because DevOps gives you the tools, the culture, and the practices to do that, right? I don't think you can do Agile without DevOps, and that's kind of my point on this side.
Yeah, so definitely. So the interesting thing here, sorry, I just want to quickly fix my synergy over here, otherwise I can't take notes and do what I need to do, is I want to go through the answer on the site, which is hilarious because it draws up a comparison. Sorry about that. Just getting my keyboard to work.
Let me tell you what a good answer for me is right now. It's what happened right now. So if I was interviewing somebody and if I would ask somebody this, and I wouldn't, and if that person would come into a discussion about me on the benefits of the things that DevOps has and Agile has, and this kind of a back and forth is a good answer in an interview. I don't want a verbatim definition. Well, an answer, the difference between Agile and DevOps is blah, 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 blah. I don't care about that. I want you to understand. I want to understand, do you know what that is? Are you aware of these things? So
yes. Yeah. Okay, so what they do is they have got a nice little grid, which firstly, it's got features, DevOps, Agile. And then rows. First one, agility. For DevOps, agility in both development and operations. Yes, it's a true statement, but that's like saying, yes, the sun will come up tomorrow. Doesn't add much value. Agile only provides agility in development. Okay, cool. Processes and practices. Let's start with Agile first. Involves practices such as Agile, Scrum, Agile, Kanban, etc. Please note these are capitalized. Agile, Kanban. involves processes such as CI, CD, CT, etc.
What is CT? Continuous testing, or I guess.
Yeah.
But there's also Kanban both. There's also Kanban on
Yeah.
DevOps.
And and here's the kicker. Here's the kicker that tells me that this is going to be some fun in this article. And like I said, this is the first Google hit I had when I searched for top DevOps interview questions. Key focus area. Take a guess. Okay. What does DevOps focus on? Let's start with that.
Servers or operations, I guess, right? Or something. I don't know. Like
adding value and streamlining processes, removing bottlenecks, making systems more resilient, helping developers go faster, do their job better. According to them, key focus areas, timelines and quality have equal priority. For Agile, timelines is the main priority. I'm going to call bullshit on that one.
And here's the thing. Here's why. Nobody knows what DevOps is. Like nobody can define a DevOps in a single sentence because it's so complex. It's so many things. And even like Mr. H91 here says, do we really need DevOps engineers? There are no such thing as DevOps engineers.
Yes.
Right? Doesn't exist. There's no such thing.
Yeah. But the second part of the question here is, this is something I really have strong opinions on, which is shouldn't the developers be responsible for deploying their own code? Yes, they should. As I write it, you build it, you run it. Yes, 100% yes on this, with the caveat saying that my experience has been that often developers understanding cloud in detail is basically a full-time brain space. I've not met a lot of people that know the cloud intimately and is able to automate it and operate it and build code. There are very few of those people around. They either gravitate towards the one edge or the other edge. So expecting the developers to be responsible for the code, definitely. Expecting them to be able to monitor and make sure it's up and running and that everything is good, definitely.
The
Provide them with tools.
Exactly. But the point of DevOps is like, and I'll give you an example from Amazon or AWS. Our service teams consist of mostly developers, and there's a system engineer or two, right? And they're sitting in the same office. They're sitting in the same team next to each other. We don't have system engineers sitting in a different building in a different time zone. We have their system engineers sitting next to them and say, if your developer is struggling with something, of course, developers publish code to production all the time. Hey, it's a Git push away. But if you need something more, if you need to get more logs, you get more monitoring, you always have a systems engineer person here who can help you out. And that person owns the same product you're running. So that's kind of a thing, right? So and the point of DevOps is actually tearing down that silo approach, right? You have a bucket of developers, you have a bucket of engineers or administrators or whatever you would like to call them. There's no such thing. There are still system engineers and there's still developers and admins, but they all handle the same thing in a point, right? I don't expect engineers and administrators to develop your application. Nobody says that ever. When it comes to like administrators and engineers needs to be developers, you need to develop your infrastructure. You need to develop your application and the workload and the tools around it to make it that much better. So yeah.
So what I want to pop up here is actually a nice diagram from, you can see the URL there is from Adrian Hornsby, which is when you think about, and also please take this into account that this depends on the size of the organization. If you're very small, yes, you will have a person that does a lot of the tooling as well as the coding because you're busy going with things and setting things up, etc. But as you start growing, it's definitely worthwhile to figure out, you can call it a platform team, you can, whatever term, just don't call it a DevOps team.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
Exactly.
Because what they do is they provide the tooling while working with the developers for those teams. So for example, the developers say, listen, we are building in Python. We need to be able to deploy with Darko. We want to do these things. Help us make this better and faster. Then there's a team that's got the headspace and focused on how do I build these, what they want, the tooling for them, and build them patterns to actually reuse. Okay. So that's how you help them. And this is one of these things. So for example, this is when you start looking at teams in AWS and Amazon, is that the teams are responsible. Yes, they build it, they own it, they run it, but they are responsible for the product. Yeah. They're not responsible for that whole long list of all the tools over there. They're responsible for using those tools correctly, and they are welcome to go build their own tools. But as always, if you want to go off the what's called the golden path, you need to be able to justify and validate, and also be prepared to deal with all the fallout. Because if you use your own custom CI/CD tool and it breaks, the other team that's maintaining the company-wide one is not going to come help you because, there are better ways to engage with it.
I would agree. And this is a great diagram. It's a great approach for this one, right? So because Of course, smaller companies approach it differently. You have a smaller team, you build your own tools or have a common set of tooling. In large companies, you already have things existing, but there always are engineers. Even if a product team owns a product, right? There's always a person there who doesn't do just software development. There's always a person who can also help them with monitoring, help establish, hey, what do we need to monitor? Because let's be honest, developers don't always know what needs to be monitored, right? They know, oh well, application should do this. Fine, yeah. Sometimes you have to get people, okay, let's monitor business outcomes, let's monitor this and that, so we can get a functioning thing. So
and also it depends on how they've been built. Because I only know about monitoring because you know what, production went down, crap broke.
Exactly. And also this is where diversity comes in. And when I say diversity, I don't mean the general term that people use, diversity now. I mean diversity of peoples and experiences. If you have a group of JavaScript developers that they have only done JavaScript their entire lives, and it worked on their laptops, right? Or it worked in this company they worked into. But you get a person who's an engineer, and that person has been burned on a lot of different things. That person brings a lot more experience to these people, augmenting their knowledge at the same way that these developers augment the knowledge of that system engineer. So it's very important to have varied people in the team, but doing the same thing, because and doing the same thing, I mean owning the same product, right? So that's kind of thing. What I want to say.
So just quick side meme note on that. For those who didn't know where Docker comes from, this is where you can go Google for the meme.
Yeah, exactly. But man, Docker did save a lot of things, man. I think when containers came to be, I mean, containers existed for a long time, but when containers became these things ubiquitous, you can run them on your laptops. Man, it's so fixed. It fixed so many things. I work with developers who my C# application perfectly runs on my Windows XP system that I have at home. I'm not sure why it doesn't run on our Windows 2019 servers.
No, definitely. I mean, so just quickly for those that are listening and not necessarily watching the screen, this joke says it's a person looking at a small kid that's crying that says, it works on my machine. And then the other person responds with, then we'll ship your machine. And that's how Darko was born, ultimately, and they hug. So, yeah.
And Wapples has a comment here, why don't we make podcasts out of these?
That's actually a good suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. I mean, we can, absolutely. Especially the episodes where we talk tech like this. Because usually our episodes would focus around building something, and just talking about building something is without seeing it doesn't make a lot of sense. But on these things, we can absolutely make a being streaming podcast or something like that. Stay tuned.
Well, what I'm thinking is we resurrect Streaming on the Rocks, where we sit and sip some alcoholic beverage in the evening, and we do these kind of conversations, and we can have some slow jazz, and we go, welcome to Streaming on the Rocks, where we talk about tech, and we will give you the insight in the industry.
Wow, that's a great.
Cool. Yes, okay. Bit of silliness. Well, are we ready? So now we've smashed this question one basically into the question itself doesn't make sense. Never mind that it's the first question I want to ask you.
This question, I think we either got followers, or we either got fans, or we got haters, because some people love Agile, some people are very determined, and we were a bit toxic, but okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, so please take it with experience. So none of us have had good experiences necessarily with Agile and things. That I have had some good ones, but in general, I've seen more damage than good, to be honest, when people, because they think it's just going to solve the problem. But getting on to the second question, because we have got 9 more to go through, is, this one should be a fun one. I'm going to let you go first.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the need for DevOps? How can I best form this? I would always say, think how it used to be, or if you have ever worked in a company with no DevOps, think of it how it was. And I'll always give an example of a company I worked for, and I was part of we had different teams. We had a team for system administrators. We had a team for network administrators. We were separate. We had teams of software developers, and we were we were maintaining the internal infrastructure of our company, and our internal application systems, whatever, right? And our software team's application team would release an update to our software every, 6 months. That was kind of like the cadence we had. And every 3 months, doesn't matter, they would come up to us and, hey guys, we've been working for the last 6 months on our new application. Here it is. It needs to be deployed tomorrow. Okay. What? What is this application? What does it run on? Well, it's an application that runs on Windows. Okay. Let's see. Then they give us this application which was compiled on somebody's laptop, and they come to us and say, "Hey, this needs to be launched tomorrow." And we're going to dedicate a server to you. We have a bunch of them. No. It needs 6 servers, and also it needs a Fusion IO card which has so many IOPS. Back then there were no SSDs, and it costs like 10,000 euros a Fusion card. Okay, why weren't we informed about this? And then they give us this, and we purchase a card, stick it in a server, and go ahead and run it tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, every retail store in our company rings us that it doesn't work. It's completely broken. It's busted. It's just horrible. And the application team scrambles like, oh, okay, it doesn't work on this one. You have to downgrade to Windows Server 2003 because that's how it works. We can. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, no, then we have to roll back the old application. Okay. Do you have the files of the old application? No, we don't. Oh, wow. So you spend like a week of struggling, of trying to make your company function just because there's no tools, there's no practices, and there's zero communication between the people. And if you want more stories like this, read the Phoenix Project. It's basically the same thing. And that's the reason why you need DevOps, to avoid these things. And again, the story I've said, it was fine in 1997, right? When not a lot of people relied on your product. When your product was just a benefit of all the things. When your product was just, it's fine that it comes every once in a while. Nobody's expecting it to be instantly there, instantly better, and always better, right? So this book, top notch.
Yes. Yeah. So quickly, a couple of things there that came up. Like I actually had to make notes to make sure that I'll cover them all. Firstly, this comment here by G3K Byte or G3 Byte. I don't know. Geek Byte. There we go.
Okay.
I worked at a company with nothing but PHP on production, and I hope it doesn't break. Yes. So I actually worked with. Well, I went to a meetup talk once where the person's talk point that they were trying to make is that it is not necessarily bad hacking code directly in production on the server. And I was like, what I walked away from that talk was like, and this is, yes, it was more than 10 years ago, was that, hey, listen, you don't have the right processes in place. If it's faster to edit it there with risks, then there's something severely broken. Ooh, more coffee. Nice. My coffee's finished. I've already had 4. But here's a fun little story in terms of that ties in with Darko's one with not having the right tooling. So I know of someone who worked at a company, and I'm going to keep it this vague because of reasons.
Okay.
They were given a task. The task was the following. One of our customers has got a report. It's currently in the day, month, year, date format.
Okay.
The one field.
Okay.
We need to change that to rather be the American version, which is month, day, year. Right. Cool. How much time do you think was allocated for this task, and how long time do you think it took? If you had a thumbs up. This is with a reporting framework tool, so you can access the actual report. It's got formatting options on it, etc. Yeah, cool.
6 months?
No. Luckily, only 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because let me break down how that 2 weeks was spent. 4 days spent figuring out what right VM with right version of plugins and patches to spin up to do the actual dev work and do the testing. Right? 4 days. Okay. Just to get, now I can edit the report. Then 3 minutes, right click, format, change format, save, commit file. Then the remaining time, which is more than a week, was spent validating this. Because what happened is, because that change control process in practice, you had to test this on multiple versions of their SQL Server. You had to test it on multiple versions of Windows. Yeah. Even though it was exactly the same published report that only ran in one small part that at that point didn't, it used a connection string to the database, nothing else. So, I mean, the formatting happens server-side where the report is running, not in the database. So, but there was this, thou shalt always check these things list. And that took more than a week to do.
And that brings me to a quote. If your engineers are afraid to experiment, you need DevOps. That's the thing. Because if it takes a week to change a single field in a reporting engine, buddy, I mean, it's how fast are you moving? And it's the year 2020, right? Us millennials and us Gen Zers, we want everything right now. And you cannot say, well, it's going to take a week for me to change the date format in my table. What? Nothing takes a week. So
No.
that's the point, right? Cool. There's a question from Guruk Katrivel. Product development engineer, automated industry, work on agile developments and automated industry, but gradually for the last 1-2 years moved to AWS operations side, but still the designation didn't change. When we start applying, shall we say DevOps engineer? How to convince recruiter and mention clearly in CV?
Okay.
I would rather go with cloud engineer than DevOps engineer if you are focusing on the cloud. If you want to say, because I mean I know that DevOps engineer is a term that's used very widely, and it's mentioned, and I get job offers saying we're looking for a DevOps engineer. Right? So am I. But I would say cloud engineer. That would be my advice on this. What is he writing? I'm not sure.
I am writing a dirty secret here.
Dirty secret. Yeah. So, Guruk, I would say that you should put like a cloud engineer if you want as your designation on your CV. If you want to stick out for sure. Right? That would make more sense today.
Bad handwriting here is a very, very dirty secret. This was my title at one point.
DevOps team lead. I've seen DevOps, like, okay, here's the thing. A DevOps team lead makes more sense. You are tasked to implement DevOps culture in your team or in multiple teams. That makes more sense than a DevOps engineer.
Well, I was supervising DevOps engineers, and therefore I was the DevOps team lead.
That's something else.
Granted, that was just a title. We did fight against it, and it was with a pinch of salt, and everybody understood that that's not what we're doing, and we did great work, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. We have got just under an hour left. So quickly, for those that have joined us, welcome. Today, we are talking about interviewing for DevOps positions and questions that we take. And what I'm doing is a little bit of entertainment for myself and Darko is I went and Googled top DevOps questions for an interview. And I got to a site which has some very, very interesting questions. And now we are going to move on to question number 3. Are we ready?
Let me close my eyes.
Are you ready? Okay.
Let's go ahead.
Boom, boom, boom. Here we go.
How is DevOps? Wasn't this the first question?
You see where this article is going.
Okay. What is SDLC?
Software Development Lifecycle. So this is what they're getting at. I'm assuming here is that it's a process thing. Isn't DevOps about processes, about changing processes and how you get things out there? So let's quickly see what they say, because I haven't actually read the answer yet.
I literally don't understand this, because, like, why would DevOps at all differ between against the software delivery lifecycle? If we're talking about software delivery, DevOps brings the tools and the practices and everything else in that. But DevOps is not just about software delivery. DevOps is a lot of different things. So I would say, I think it's comparing countries to cities, right? It's software delivery life cycles and agile methodologies should exist within DevOps practices, but you shouldn't compare the two, right? So.
Yeah. No, I also agree. And the interesting thing here, so what I've realized, I quickly had a look at what the site is doing. This is a site selling training courses. So it kind of makes a little bit more sense, like framing questions and answers in ways that we can answer you by selling you a training course. So let's take that with a pinch of salt. But I mean, basically, I don't even think this question makes sense because it's...
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody has a comment on this, I think this... I mean, the first question was basically the same. What's the difference between, Agile and DevOps? But I think, Agile as a standalone method, you can compare maybe ITIL and DevOps, right? But even that is also very iffy because very difficult to determine what DevOps is in a very, very clear way. So
yeah. So I have to give parental a PG rating warning because of the next question, because I do believe Darko might start swearing in Serbian at us in a moment. But this question, Darko, is for you. Are you ready?
Okay. Which are the DevOps tools? Which tools have you worked on? DevOps tools, yes. Okay.
Well, no, I actually saw a tweet once. There is actually a DevOps tool. Do you know what it is? It's the person that purchases the tools.
Okay, there you go.
Believing there's a tool. Yeah. No. So yeah.
I think this is also framed into the mindset that CI/CD equals DevOps.
Yeah.
I would say that the you can scratch DevOps out here and say which CI/CD and operations and cloud management tools have you been using?
That's pretty much exactly the answer. They go like Git for version control, Jenkins for continuous integration, Selenium continuous testing, Puppet Chef Ansible configuration management, Nagios. I wouldn't use Nagios for cloud monitoring.
So, well, okay. I use it before, but not anymore.
Yeah, not for cloud, and then Docker for containerization. Yeah, sure, but I don't want to be funny, but all of those tools are also dev tools.
Yeah. I mean, most of them are developer tools, right? The developer enhancing tools. But again, you can combine all those things and call them DevOps tools, but they're tools for automation. In essence, right? Automation and monitoring. That's how they boil down to. You monitor for things that are happening and how they're showing up, and then you react to them with some automation tools, or you react to certain actions such as Git pushes and whatnot to developers. So, if I was on an interview and somebody would ask me what DevOps tools have you used, I would say there are no such thing as DevOps tools. I would ask them to define me what DevOps tool are. But yeah.
Couple of comments and questions quickly. So firstly, yes. So just for those wondering about the state of these questions, yes, they are questions. And I specifically used this first set because when I immediately looked at them, I went like, what the hell does whoever did this article, group of people, even know what DevOps is? And that's why I want to discuss it, because I think someone might search for this, get this, and then memorize and answer this. So yeah, that firstly is why the questions are funny. Couple of interesting questions or statements around here around like rsync and using different things. Firstly, just quickly Wapples, SaltStack. I have heard great things about SaltStack. I personally have not had time to play with it yet. My understanding is it fits that gap between Ansible, which is very quick to get going, doesn't have a super high learning curve, but later on with complex things, it starts getting a little bit more difficult. And also Ansible, while it can do from the client or from the target machines call back into like an Ansible primary server of some kind, I believe, with Ansible Tower. Ansible generally creates SSH connections to each of these individual machines, which means you need access to them. Where Chef on the other side has got a daemon process running that connects back to the main Chef server or servers and actually pulls from there. So it's a pull versus a push model. And SaltStack can actually do both of those. And it's in Python as well, I believe. But it's closer to the Chef model where it pulls its configuration a little bit more configurable and better, but it's also slightly more difficult to learn than Chef.
I used to use my first configuration management tool I ever had an experience with was CF Engine, and CF Engine was developed in 1993. And the company I used to work for, we used to configure like Solaris and HPUX systems and AIX systems with CF Engine. In a limited sense. I've never built anything on CF Engine, but like if you want to talk about a retro configuration management utility, CF Engine it is. But SaltStack is really cool. I've never played around with it too much, but again, as you said, it fits this really nice niche. Okay.
Cool. Let's quickly just
let me attach to Mookie Monkey here. Cobus, do you think Docker is a DevOps tool?
Yes. Yes. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because it allows you to transport and deploy your code with a single tool.
There we go.
Yes. So to be dead honest, Docker is one of those things where I honestly feel like, yes, I agree with the statement here that it makes things harder, makes things more difficult. But the way the world is moving and the way computing is moving as a whole, it's definitely time you need to spend on Docker and understand how it works. Because even if you don't agree with the fact that, sharing a server with things, the main benefits from you are one, standardizing of tooling. Because it means that a container is a container is a container. I honestly don't care what the hell is in the container. I know how to get the container, ship it, keep it up and running, and get basic metrics out of it. Super basic being CPU, RAM, those kind of things. There's a lot of value in that. It also simplifies your tooling for deployment because guess what? it's a container you deploy. There's so many rich tools available for you to do that you don't have to worry about. Coming from guess who wrote bash scripts for a long time to do things, to deploy things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think
so it just means
abstraction is important. Abstraction is important. And Docker gives us this amazing abstraction utility. So, really good.
Yeah.
And I would say like I've actually even worked with Solaris zones. I'm not sure if you ever had a chance to work with that. Solaris zones are basically these types of, I wouldn't say containers, but virtual machines on top of a virtual machine on a physical machine. Hardware. It's weird, but it works, right? So.
No, the thing that broke me with that is I did work on, I think it's AIX servers at one point as well, where your license determined the amount of hardware you got. Even though the machine had like 50 cores, you could only, because of your license, use 10 of them. I'm like, this seems insane. Who thought about of this business plan? But apparently it worked, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we ready for the next question?
Let's do it.
Cool.
I hope you are enjoying this.
Yes. Question number 4, let me just get it back up here, was this one. And question number 5, let's go down the rabbit hole. How do these tools work together? Okay. I'm not even going to try and...
This is a great question for a very open-ended discussion, right? But
yes.
I don't think you can say how all these tools work together, because that is a very it depends answer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody asked, would Terraform be a DevOps tool?
Yeah.
If you like to name automation tools, DevOps tools, yes, absolutely. But first and foremost, Terraform, CloudFormation, CDK, Pulumi, whatever, are infrastructure as code frameworks and tools that help you do automation. Ansible, Chef, Puppet, SaltStack, CF Engine are tools for configuration management and automation tools. And of course, they all fit into the concept of like, hey, this thing will help me be DevOps. But how do these all work together? So I would answer it like this, right? Maybe you can give a better answer, but I think all these tools that you mention or talk about are designed to help move things smoothly through different stages of the software / infrastructure delivery lifecycle, right? They should all work in tandem. Oh, there we go. But this is, okay, got it. Plan, code, build, deploy, operate.
Yeah. So this is just, I just extracted the image and removed the URL, because like I said, we're not here to shame this. And just quickly for, where was that question around? Mr. Pink 52, are these interview questions you are criticizing? Yes. This is literally, I searched for the top 10 interview questions for DevOps interviews because I had a ping for how to hire someone. And this is what we're not discussing here, because I saw these questions. I'm like, wow, there's something seriously that I think wrong here. So let's discuss it.
So is the answer here Jenkins? Is that the answer?
Well, often Jenkins is. I
agree.
So here's the thing. I've used Jenkins in ways that I am ashamed of. So the worst was I had, and this was many years ago, I needed to deploy on Windows machines.
Okay.
And there was this requirement that you may not open a single port to the outside world.
Okay.
We will not tolerate that other than the one, let's say the IIS port 443 for the machine or something like that. Okay. So that was what they said, and they said, thou shalt not. So I'm like, okay, cool, no worries. Let me install the Jenkins worker node on each of these machines, give it a unique tag, and voila, I can create build jobs that deploy with tag limitation or label limitations and then deploy to each of those nodes. Sure, I've got a process running as administrator on a machine that I can remotely execute commands on, but it ticked the box for security. And they were happy. And I explained to them, you understand what it is I'm doing over here? And they said, sure, it's fine. Ticks a box.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and this, okay. Yeah. Jenkins is a great integration tool. It helps integrate the workflows. But at the same time, you can say, oh, you can do this with GitLab CI, or you can do this with Travis CI, or you can do it with Code Pipeline, or you can do it yes, those things are called pipelines. And I wouldn't say that's the answer, that they work together with pipelines. I mean, having Jenkins on a pipeline here doesn't make them work together. It makes them integratable, right? That makes them have the ability to connect to each other and talk to each other and share information. But at the same time, you can do the same thing by throwing things in a message queue and having them read that. Like, I would say that the proper answer here would be How would I give a proper answer to this properly?
Well, I can give an answer by giving a suggestion.
Okay, go ahead.
Our next episode of Streaming on the Rocks will be about the questions you should ask during a DevOps interview and how to understand what the person has done. Yes, so slightly more serious. I just had the idea that Darko and myself will actually do Streaming on the Rocks. We'll bring it back. He has no choice in this, say, in case you were wondering. I do too. And we will actually turn that, I think, hopefully into a podcast. We can discuss the logistics, but let's get a couple of episodes done first. And I think the first one will be, how would we interview someone if we had to do it from scratch? So we will do that next week sometime. That I can commit to. And at least hopefully, Darko, you're not on leave next week, are you?
No, what is leave?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's when you go to Romania.
No, there's no such thing. Reinvent is coming up. There's no such thing as leave.
No, leave is when you go to Romania.
To Romania?
No, Romania.
Romania.
Yes.
Cobus,
Hashtag dad jokes.
Stop it.
Yes.
I want to comment this on Mr. Pink 52. DevOps as a position is a nonsense anyway. Yes, mentality and a way of working. Exactly. That's the thing. It's not a position. It's not a role. It's not a college degree you can get. It's not even a certification you can get.
You can.
You can.
AWS Professional DevOps.
No. Okay, so but actually that's a fair point. You can get a certification and you should be trained in DevOps, because if you know things around DevOps, you should be able to translate that to people and help people adopt DevOps. So that certification is fine. But I would say engineers and titles and positions are kind of useless in this case.
Yeah. Cool. So are we going to move on to the next question?
Let me close my eyes again. Go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, Doc, I think what we'll do is we will make a clickbait and we will call our session the top 10 questions you should be asking in your DevOps interviews and how to prepare for them.
So yes.
Cool. Okay. Done. Cool. Going on to the next question then. Now that we know how to market this. Yes. This is actually a good question.
This is a good question. This is a proper... And I will leave you answer it. Go ahead, Cobus.
Yeah. So the reason I feel this is a good question is that it allows the person answering it to tell you what they've done in the past to actually achieve whatever it is they think is DevOps. Because what are the advantages of DevOps? Well, it allows the developers to deploy quicker because I built a CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so the person thinks maybe it's just automation. Or, hey, I was able to help in all the different teams build, or I built tools for the different teams to help them go fast and do this. Okay, cool. Person knows about cross-team collaboration, etc., etc. So for me, from the base level is literally it's on the one sense, bringing all the teams closer together and help them work together towards the common goals in terms of running software that is up and reliable and doesn't break. Because that's kind of like you want that. That's the end goal. So how you achieve that that's basically where the DevOps to a certain extent comes in. Is like get the teams to first communicate, get them to work together on tooling, get them to set what is the definition of good. That's a surprisingly hard question.
That's a very good question, and that's a very good point. What's your definition of good? How do you know what you're doing is good? So So for a change, we have a good question in this list. Yeah, I like that. I would agree with that. Like DevOps is here to kind of tear down those silos, and by tearing down those silos, you have the ability to be more agile, or move much faster. Experiment. Have this thing called the innovation flywheel, right? Innovation flywheel is this. I even have a slide somewhere about. Actually, let me bring this up, because I think an innovation flywheel is very important when we talk about DevOps and the things. So,
I know where my one is.
Wait.
So I can let's see. Are we gonna find it?
Here. I have it here.
Oh, I have to log in. I can't find it.
I just did a presentation on that this week. So.
Oh, okay. You got it.
This.
Yeah, it is a great one.
Innovation flywheel. So basically, DevOps gives you the ability to experiment, try new things out, and by having proper infrastructure and monitoring or observability tools in the game, gives you the ability to listen, to observe. How does your experiment impact what you do? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it horrible? Is it so amazing? And then based off of that, you can iterate, remove, upgrade, pat yourself on the back, and keep on experimenting. Because I've asked this question: if your developers and engineers are afraid to experiment, you need DevOps, right? And this is what it brings: the innovation flywheel, the ability to do these things. And how DevOps does this is by giving you the ability to do things fast, safe, and at lower cost, especially in the cloud, right? If you can deploy a testing environment in 2 clicks, right, or 0 clicks, even better, you are better to just apply DevOps. It's much better to experiment in the kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm actually going to do now is showcase something that made me like super giddily happy when I joined Amazon in the way that we do things. So there's a question from Wapples, which is, where can we send these questions? And that is a great question. And the answer would be, I will provide you with some kind of email link or email address to use.
Ooh.
But we don't have an email address, do we, Darko?
We don't yet.
No, we've got individual email addresses. We
Yes.
don't have one for the show. Yeah.
Ah,
So
the proper email address.
what am I going to do at the moment? I am going to, and this is access that anyone has, is I'm going to create a new mailing list for us right now.
This is
I'm not going to show you how I'm doing it because
this is basically DevOps in an operational sense. Cobus is creating a mailing list for himself without having to contact the system admin to create a mailing list for himself. So, yeah.
Shall we go with AWS Bean Streaming? Or do we want
sure.
AWS?
Sure, I think
Or do we want to
Bean
categorize it streaming? What should we call it? AWS Bean Streaming.
But is it being streaming because we have streaming on the rocks?
AWS Streaming on the Rocks.
Streaming on the rocks.
Cool. Let me just put in the right dash over here.
Yeah.
Boom.
Naming things is the most difficult thing in DevOps.
Oh, yeah.
Or in anything. And Mr. Pink, it is the equivalent of having a well-tested code. You lose fear of changing something. That is absolutely the thing, right? You are very much capable of testing things without having the fear of breaking in. Like, hey, you ever wanted a good reason to have multiple AWS accounts, right? You have a production account where you're making money from, and anything else is just fine. You can bring it up, play with it, nuke it, and be happy, right? I still wouldn't imagine letting people test their stuff on production.
There's a good argument there that if you've got the right safety rails in place and the right processes to automate all of that you can easily roll back. And maybe when you talk about the lie, that is database rollbacks at some point, but we can put that on the list for future things to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me make a note. Cool. So just quickly, since we had that question, I will put this in a banner because I don't want to paste text because then people will do it. Let's edit this quickly. Please don't send the mail right now. If you can wait, let's say 4 hours, because it does take, obviously, with mail and replication service and a whole bunch of like admin in the background, not manual admin as in automated processes, doing things and creating lists and all that. Yeah. But we now have got our mailing list that Darko and I will receive directly. So you can email us here. Did I spell it correctly? Oh, wow. Yes. Okay. Yeah. AWS Streaming on the Rocks at Amazon.com. Yeah. So you can please feel free to send us. Yeah. And then we'll take a look. Yeah. So yeah, speaking of social media, let's quickly pop our details on this. Well, we can pop it on the screen by taking this away. Yeah. You can see our details down there. And no, we never have parity between all of them. Everywhere something is slightly different. So screenshot this, write it down. We're fairly easy to find. Darko is a little bit more difficult because it's either Darko, Meszaros with a Z, without a Z, or Subotica with the town is from some kind of army radio system. I don't know. I'm just Cobus, okay?
Yeah. I'm complicated here, very much so. Okay, I have a question from Max Payne Live. Let's answer this one, I think.
Cool. Pop it on screen.
Wait, what? ECS...
GitOps operators.
But okay, GitOps operations, that's fine. With ECS deployments, most things... GitOps. Okay, GitOps on ECS.
So you do know that the latest version of Docker has got ECS deployment built into the actual CLI.
Yes. If you use Docker desktop, you can actually deploy to ECS directly from Docker. But I think he's asking more about GitOps. How can he do things to the GitOps? And
well, give us some examples of what you want to do to your containers and all that. Because I like the idea of GitOps being able to, for example, extract information from a system and do things with it. But what exactly? A couple of tasks. So let's see. Cool. We're going to give that a few.
Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. something that allows you to send chat commands and they execute directly against the ECS cluster without you having to write as many things in between. You can click and connect kind of things. Is that what you mean?
No, he's talking about a GitOps, not ChatOps. So,
Oh, sorry.
He's talking about Flux CD. I'm not sure what Flux CD is.
Yeah.
Let me have a look. Tool automatically ensures the state of your Kubernetes. Okay, Max Life. This is basically a way of ensuring that your ECS cluster stays in a configuration form that you define.
Okay.
Just use infrastructure as code, right?
Yes.
I mean, that would be my suggestion. Use Terraform, use CloudFormation, use CDK, and this is where you define the state of your services, your tasks, your task definition, all of those things you define there. And if you want to make a change, git push. And that's it. With a proper pipeline.
Yeah, because the thing is that this is the one thing that really concerned me when I saw people interacting directly with Kubernetes clusters and using kubectl for deployments. And it's literally kubectl YAML file.
Yeah.
And that effectively is the same as piping any shell script into Bash and saying, I'm just going to take the script and run it, no matter what it is, which means that, for example, now in Kubernetes, let's say you want to go and clean up things. You decide that this service should no longer be deployed. You need to go run commands to manually delete them service by service, and hopefully you remember and know all of the naming conventions and the bits that you deployed.
Right.
Which to me, as someone who loves infrastructure as code, just seems insane. I mean, I would expect, to use infrastructure as code to define it. I mean, you keep track of it. Cheapest, yeah.
Yeah. There's a question from William. When are we getting AWS Twitch emotes? I don't think we can control that. We don't have, at least so far, we don't have emote control on the AWS account.
But watch the space.
There are emotes from my account. If you go to my Twitch account, there's a Cobus emoji or emote. I've basically created a Cobus emote. If you're not part of that, you'll basically see this right now.
So just a little bit of history here. So this is not the first time this has happened to me. At a previous company, there was a Slack emoji with just my face and my beard. And the meaning behind it is like when people did something that I wouldn't approve of, because yes, I have strong opinions, they would just tag the message with that, saying like, do you think Cobus would approve of this?
But after I push to my repo, I want to have a system that sees my commit and then run commands.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's anything for ECS like that. What would Cobus do?
But so specifically the ECS commands that you want in terms of, I'm assuming, to being able to deploy certain things now, you can actually define your entire ECS cluster with Terraform. And what you can do there is Terraform is this little section that the lifecycle policy management part, where you can say, for example, create this resource like the ECS cluster, the task definition, and inside the task definition, you specify the container that you want to run along with that actual tag. Now, obviously, if you want to redeploy with the CI system, that's going to change that value, and then Terraform's going to fight you and want to flip it back to what it was originally. But you can flag different fields using the lifecycle policy management to say, ignore that field when there are updates to it. So first time around, it'll actually create it and actually do that for you. And then we can also do, for example, for the actual service portion of ECS as well, we just specify the number of copies of the service to run. That you can also say, start off with a base number, but then after that, ignore that, because that should then be handled by different lifecycle management policies.
Right.
And what I do there, Max Payne, is just like the GitOps types of thing is like literally put your Terraform code right next to your application code. So creating the ECS cluster is one level up, which is I used to call those the environment repositories. And what they would do is they would create the load balancers, the ECS clusters, etc., the things shared by multiple services. Like let's say the Route 53 base zone that you use for DNS. And then what you have is you've got a separate repo for each of your applications or services. In there, you define, okay, here's the task definition, here's the actual service, here's my services DNS if it was exposed that way, here's how I connect to the load balancer, etc., etc. And that's how you hook that in there, which means then that if people want to make, like you're saying now, GitOps type changes to infrastructure, commit it to that repo, goes through your CI/CD pipeline, and boom, it goes out.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say like that. I mean, making a commit and having a tool do that for you. If you're maintaining that all in Terraform does that all for you, right? Especially in ECS, because ECS has no additional separate YAML configuration files like Kubernetes does, right? What CI/CD pipelines out there to help me do it? Literally anyone, any CI/CD, including GitHub Actions, Travis CI, Jenkins, code pipeline on AWS. So of course, Kubernetes. Yeah, I get it. It's a very friendly GitOps tool, but again, ECS works natively out of the box, right? There's no need for a tool. The only tool you need is Git, right? So in your hands, like it would be amazing if you could, everything you can do in your life would be through Git, right? You just commit something to a repository, and that's how you make things, right? And this is the same thing. There's no additional tool to do these things, right? Literally, you commit your Terraform code to something, to a Git repository, it gets picked up by a CI/CD pipeline. You do all the testing you want to do on it, and then basically just deploy the change, and your ECS cluster will take those changes up. There you go, GitOps.
So what I do want to pump here a little bit is a talk that I did for HashiTalks Africa. Over here, let me just find the links for you quickly. It's even on the HashiCorp site, so I can print it over there. So what this is a talk that I gave about how to do multi-AWS account with Terraform and automate things. Right. And why I want to point you at that is, firstly, go look at the video because I explained how to do multiple accounts, but the video also links to my GitHub repo where I've got the make file that I use there. So one of the big things there that I did is I wrapped my Terraform in a make file with multiple additional steps just to make sure that you can't make a mistake. So you literally go env equals dev make plan. Right. That's the command that you execute. And then the benefit of doing it with make this way is that putting that in your CI/CD pipeline is super easy. Right. And part of the things there that I'm expanding on, which I'm probably going to do using GitHub Actions, is being able to post to your commit, to your pull request, because doing infrastructure code is great, but we don't always treat it like code, which is create a PR, review what it's going to do, and then only once test passed, deploy it. Yeah. So this helps you along that path where you actually pull it. One step further, Three Musketeers. Oh, wow, you're teaching us a lot here. I don't know what Three Musketeers are. Was that a term meaning 3 people need to say yes on a pull request? No, I'm honestly, I have no idea.
Not me neither.
Okay, definitely not YouTube videos.
It's a tool. All right, we'll try to figure it out.
Yeah. Cool. There we go. 3musketeers.io. Yeah, the videos were no. Boom, boom, boom. We'll definitely look at this. So what I'll do is I'll actually put this in our show notes over here of things to go look at, along with the Flux one. Let me grab that as well, so we can talk about afterwards. Like I said, we are going to probably try and turn this one specific episode into our first podcast.
Yeah.
We'll have to re-record some kind of snappy intro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This thing makes a lot of sense. Like these kind of talks to make it in a podcast. Everything else is a bit, visual.
Yeah, with show notes and things and a site and all that.
Yeah.
So getting back to our interview questions, we last did question 5, so now we're on to question 6.
Okay.
No, we did do this one. Yes.
Yes.
So question 7, are we ready?
Speed and innovation, and that's it. Well, speed,
reliability,
of course. Well, somebody will come to you like, what is SRE? Like, how does SRE differ from DevOps? I don't know.
That's the longest discussion.
That's the longest discussion.
So the answer here that you should not be hearing unless you're the one doing the consulting is make me more money.
Exactly. DevOps will not, well, okay. DevOps in the long term will make your business better because it gives you the ability to experiment, innovate, safely deploy. The things that cost you most money in your company is falling behind and making mistakes. So if you fall behind the competition, boom, your business is out. Well, to an extent. B, if you make mistakes and your production goes down, you lose money. So DevOps kind of, if in a good DevOps environment and DevOps culture, it helps you prevent those things. It encourages experimentation. It encourages innovation in a safe way that you do not break down. So,
no, definitely.
Paid more if you're an SRE. Okay, Cobus, what is an SRE? I know site reliability.
So software reliability. Yes.
Is it software?
So let me.
I think it's site reliability.
Sorry, site reliability. Yeah. Yes, SRE. One of the parts why you can say yes, you're getting paid more for it is that's what Google actually uses. Now, my understanding, at least, of what an SRE at Google is that's a person that has got the ability to pull a deployed version from production and kick it back to the developers saying, listen, this is not good enough. I'm responsible for keeping everything up and running and everything stable. You just deploy something that broke, go fix it. So I've got that absolute power saying, slap, go sit in the corner and fix your mistake. So I think the getting paid more part is obviously Google pays really well. That might be part of the point behind it. Also, I think SRE like DevOps it might be viewed in the industry as a step above DevOps, I think, because you're not just automating, you're also managing production, which is kind of, to me, a certain, I want to say a moot point, because on the one hand, DevOps people should be, encouraging people to understand production and take responsibility for production. So,
yeah, there shouldn't be one person to own production. Let me call it that way. Like, you build it, you run it, right? You own the things you're doing. So there's not an ultimate, deity that you reach out to and it's like, hello, sir, can I please deploy my thing, sir? No. So, but okay, I agree with this.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Cool. So, question 7. What is the most important thing DevOps helps us achieve?
Well, I just answered that, right?
But
I said speed.
Other than speed, let's say practical. Remember, you're interviewing someone, so you want to assess their skills based on this question. How would you expect the answer for that?
I would say safety, security, scalability, reliability, those kind of things, stability. That's a thing. Like, but again, all of these things kind of boil down into speed, stability, security, and innovation. So
yeah. So I'm happy. So I think in summary, this also isn't a terrible question.
This is a good question, yeah.
This will give you a indication of what the person actually thinks. What is DevOps?
If person tells you it gives us a CI/CD pipeline, that's wrong. Or it makes operations develop and developers run operations. So that's a very long question.
The next question is,
where DevOps can be used in industry real life. Everywhere. Like, I don't see, like, okay, besides some heavily regulated industries or government institutions where you cannot have the ability to deploy all the time and have multiple different environments where somebody has to go and physically stamp an environment saying this is production ready. That's the only place you cannot use DevOps, maybe. But
I've actually seen the heavy regulated industries benefit more from DevOps than the non, because you remove more humans out of the loop. As in, I fully agree with
that. But if there is a place like that, it would most likely be something very heavily regulated. And again, I agree with Cobus that if you remove people from the equation, it's more regulated. But when I say heavily regulated, I mean traditional systems, like traditional governments. I used to work in those kind of places, and sometimes that's where a DevOps would be very difficult to implement. I know that the U.S. government and those kind of agencies, they are very strict on the way things are done, security and all that stuff. So I get that. But I would say anywhere is DevOps has a use case everywhere. Literally every line of business, any industry, any company. I mean, so I would be to be honest, I would be very much surprised if a new company comes up and they're not practicing DevOps. Like, I would be really surprised to see that in 2020, that a company willingly goes the old route. Right? They're like, I'll have a pot of developers and I have a pot of system engineers, and we'll just run things every 6 months. I would be really surprised if anybody does that anymore. So
and survives. Obviously, people can do it, but it's a question of are they able to survive is the question. So
this question seems like 2010, right? Like that kind of age, and like that would be okay. I can maybe give you an example of a company I know that did that, but not in 2020.
Yeah. So quickly, let's pop this one on the screen. Sounds interesting.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That last one, dev enablement. That's cheapest. Spend time on that, please.
Enable your developers to do their jobs, right? Do not hinder them. Do not, like, there's always a joke between, it's operations and the developers, they're breaking things, and operations is very hard they want stability, they don't want things to. I heard this from somebody saying, like, well, developers want to move things fast, while operations wants to keep things slow. That's not how it should be. I mean, everybody should be trying to move fast at a stable pace, right? At a secure, safe, in a safe way, right? But if you, as an operations person or a DevOps engineer, build up your system to be very resilient or highly available and reliable, it should be fine to move really, really fast, right? But development and development, give your developers the ability, hey, here's a new laptop. And on that laptop, just run this command. It will provision your accounts. It will provision all the testing environments you want. Play to your heart's content. And I'll give you a real world example of this one. Myself, never worked in development in my life. I've been a system admin, engineer, operations, all that stuff. Joined AWS, worked in premium support. Was working very closely with the OpsWorks service teams. And one day, I've decided like, hey guys, you're missing a feature in OpsWorks for Windows bootstrapping options. And they're like, can you make it? I'm like, yeah. And they gave me access to the tool. And literally I had access to a Git repository. I made a fork, made my changes, git push, spins up in a development environment completely. Everything there all of a sudden works. Successful development, successful staging. Wabam somebody goes to review my code, and wabam, I have it in production in a week or less. I don't know, and that's development enablement. I didn't, I'm not a developer, and it enabled me to do that, right? Imagine if there was a cavalcade of legal procedures and you're writing documents and begging people, or hey, can you look at my code? Yeah, that's development enablement.
Yeah, no, definitely. Cool. So let me get back to our question. Question 9. Ooh. So question 9. Explain your understanding of expertise on both the software development side and the technical operations side of an organization you have worked with in the past. So this question has flags in it for me. First flag is that this person literally interprets DevOps as being, or meaning you work as a dev and you worked as an ops. Tell me about that history. Darko, we are so what I think the basis of our podcast or the next episode is going to be is we're going to take these, rewrite them into actual sensible questions. I mean, this one, the best I can say for it is that it gives you an opening to talk about your past experience and what you've built and what you've done and accomplished.
My question here would be, hey, can you talk about your previous experience that was working with developers or operations people? Tell me how you understand those things. How should those things work? How did you work in the past? Like, I would take it the Amazon question and tell me about a time when you worked with developers or operations from a different team, or not from a different team, from the different side of the cake. And what were your experience with it, and how would you make it better? And is there something blah blah blah? That would be my question here.
Quickly, Mr. Pink's statement over here is this is something that people do not understand. If you're interviewing with a company and you realize halfway through this is a waste of time, stop the interview, tell them thank you very much for your time. I've reached the conclusion that I don't think this is going to be a good fit, because remember, an interview is not like I want something. It's I want something and I want something, and we need to come together and figure out what that match will be and work together, because interview is a two-way discussion. So if you immediately start feeling, and personal experience here, there was one interview in my life where I walked out of the interview room and I went like, what the just happened? And I definitely do not want to work with these people. They did give me a very nice offer, so I did end up accepting it, and then sometime down the line, I very, very much regretted it.
Yeah. No, I've refused. I basically ended my interviews mid interview. I'm like, listen, I don't want to be wasting your time. I think this doesn't make sense. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, but this is not something I want. Right? I don't want a company that asks me, like, oh, so how will you fight those pesky developers? And those kind of questions, right? So we want to make sure that we are and here's the thing, this gives value to you because you're stating your value. You're stating this is the hill where I die on, right? This is how I am proud of my work and of my experience, that I will not just sink down and say, hey, you know what? I'll just take whatever DevOps means and I'll be a DevOps engineer, right? So yeah.
Look, I mean, quickly, so just before we get to the longer question here, which is Denny's comment over here saying, I hated you, but I accepted your offer. Yep. Oh, sorry, this one. Till I get a new one. Just remember this. Everything it's game theory, playing board games.
Yeah.
Your life is a game that you're busy playing. Yeah. So if you are going to play the card where I'm going to accept this other job, even though I don't like it because it's giving me a higher salary to give me leverage to then jump a second time for a higher salary, you can play that card, and it is a good move. Just remember, you can't keep playing that card, because if you keep doing that, companies are start going to pick up a pattern saying, oh, you're just using us to get a higher salary or something. So there's certain things you can do once or twice in your career, and just be aware of what is the long-term perception going to be if you do that often. But yes, it's a very valid move. I've seen a lot of people get an increase by just getting a competing offer, literally like going out there, interviewing and coming back saying, listen, here are 3 offers that offers me 40% more than I'm earning at the moment. I do like my job, but I do think I'm being underpaid. Are you willing to match it? That is a good way of doing it. A bad way of doing it is, here's my resignation. Sorry, they are offering me 40% more. Okay, please stay. Here's 40% more.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stay. The problem there is that now all of a sudden it's a grudge increase, where if you went to them up front and said, listen, I want more because look, this is what I can get more. Yeah. The company can either say, sorry, we don't think you're worth it, or various discussions. It's a little bit cleaner. Yeah.
I agree. It makes you look bad. If you come to your employer and say, I'm leaving, I got a better offer, then you're just being salty. Right? If you come to your employer and say, hey, I've been getting offered this much for my skills. Could we do something about it? And I can say from experience that I got something from it. If your employer is willing to keep you and they value you, they're willing to put up to keep you still. So that's a really great
and I mean,
way to do it.
Being able to speak to your employer and your manager directly about things like this makes life so always easier, because that allows you to do things. For example, if you've got a good relationship with you can tell them, hey, listen, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I am going to go for a couple of interviews because I want to get a feel for what the market value is like, and I want to compare that to what I'm currently being paid. That might make them a little bit nervous, but in theory, they shouldn't be nervous if they're paying you what you're worth, as well as what's market related, and you're doing good work. So you should be able to get to that point. Yes. Mr. Pink. Sorry, let's just quickly get to Max Payne's comment over here before we get to question 10.
Absolutely, and this is a fair point, and we mentioned this in the beginning.
I just want to quickly read it for the people. So DevOps is a mindset, but in organizations there normally do exist devs and ops, people who focus on those things. So with the you write it, you run it mantra, how would it work with devs and ops people? How would it actually work practically? Very good question.
And I can give you a practical example. I mentioned this in the beginning, that in Amazon we have this, and your services that you use on Amazon are developed by, you guessed it, developers. But in those teams, there's an ops person, an engineer. We call them system engineers. And they are basically, you have a team of a 2-pizza team, right? 5 to 8, 10 people that run a specific service or a product. And one of them is an engineer, 2 of them is an engineer, and the rest are developers and product managers. So they all work in tandem. They all work for the common same goal. And they all basically own and run their product. And when we talk about you build it, you run it, we don't mean like you code your things and you monitor your servers. We mean you build your things. We mean you talk to your developers, you talk to your customers. You get feedback from your customers directly by, reaching out to developer advocates such as Cobus and myself, and we pointing you to the right customers. And that's how to make things. And that's where the silos break down. There's no longer an operations team sitting in a different time zone that you have to reach to.
So practically, things that I've done in the past that work really well to enable the developers is that the developers write the code, but they need to be able to own it and run it and make sure that it is running. So the ops type teams provide a dashboard of some kind where they can build graphs to actually monitor the performance of the app. And what they do is they define what libraries to use and how to use those libraries inside the developer code. The developer then goes and says, what metrics do I pump in here? What graphs do I build on my dashboard? Because I now have the ability to graph things and track them and trace them and actually do that, which means that's how they work together. Practical example. So ops does the time spending figuring out what is going to be the best thing to actually do this monitoring, given all the other teams' requirements, puts that in place, make sure that part keeps running, but the dev does the other part where the actual implementation is.
Yeah, exactly. So, and exactly what you say, Mr. Max Payne Life. You embed ops person in the dev team. That's it. And the goal of you build it around is that ops team, that ops person, that ops person is actually owning the product, and they have an investment in that product. Now, it's difficult to do this in smaller teams, right? But again, in smaller companies. But you should think about that. You should really think about that as well. You don't want to have this. If you ever read the Phoenix Project, they have a guy called Brian, I believe, like the main sysadmin ops guy who was just pulled apart by the. Is it Brian?
So wasn't that John? I think it was John, the security guy.
I forgot his name. So he was pulled apart completely by every other application team, and you do not want that. You want a person per product and those things. And communication is absolutely key. So devs don't actually run it. Yes, they do.
So here's the distinction. Let's use Kubernetes as a good example of this. Your ops team is responsible for setting up the cluster however they want to do it, managed service, bare metal, etc. They're responsible for giving you a mechanism to deploy to Kubernetes that is safe. The developer, however, is responsible for writing the code and using that to actually do the deployment. And then once that specific service is running inside Kubernetes, they need to keep it up and running. They need to make sure that it's working. So yes, they actually run it. They, however, don't run Kubernetes. So if Kubernetes breaks, ops team takes a look. If the actual service breaks, dev team takes a look, unless they get to a point where they realize there's maybe something wrong with the monitoring or wrong with the deployment system, in which case they work together with the ops team saying, cool, we found this edge case where when we do this, this happens. Let's investigate together and figure out what's going on. So yes, it's not the ops person that's going to get paged at 2 a.m. in the morning if that one service doesn't work. It's that dev team.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is the point of DevOps. Automate things, make it as automated as possible. Use managed services, use the cloud to make it much easier for you, right? Do not run your own native Kubernetes cluster for your static website.
This is a good example. So the example here that Wapples is giving us is we are currently experimenting with a team to blend the dev and ops actually together. As you say, you write it, you run it. The dev peeps are learning how to do the ops side with an embedded ops person. And that's perfect. Because the thing is, you want both sides to understand the different worlds and how it works. And that's how you get them.
Exactly. And this the communication, very important. And the example that I had in my life, that we had application developers that have been building this application that nobody knew how it should run. The developers should also teach me as an ops or an engineer how their application functions. If I know the details on their framework, their platforms, the thing they're using, I can make it much, much better, right? So, ops person is me. Good.
Okay. So, quick answer here for you. This is practical and useful.
Time, unfortunately.
Yes, but we can definitely, I think there's a lot of value in these discussions. So Max Payne, please come back to more sessions and ask this question. But to answer this one quickly, how does your ECS service know which cluster it deploys to? With Terraform, you've got this beautiful thing called remote state. So I can have my environment repo that creates the ECS cluster, and I use an output in that Terraform state. And then from this service over here, I can actually reference the environment state and say, go do the lookup for the ECS cluster and then pipe that into my actual thing. Yeah. Yes, so the app needs to know the remote state. Yeah. So basically, but you could just define that as a data source. So it's fairly easy to do, and that actually helps doing it. But with that, we are going to end it off. We won't get to our last question, which is actually an interesting one, which I think can also be an entire show on its own.
Yeah.
So that will be show number 2 for Streaming on the Rocks,
so
the anti-patterns of DevOps.
Expect next week that we don't know yet. By the way, Mr. Bing, we stream on Mondays and Fridays at the same time every week. So feel free to join us. But next week, we're going to have a special episode of Streaming on the Rocks, which means it's a later in the day type show. And we're going to do it live as well. But we're going to also have it recorded as a podcast. So we would like to have you as well on chat, and we would like to answer those questions. But it's going to be a later... It's going to be a late night. It's not going to be a late night. It's going to be like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. I don't know, depending on how.
That can be a late night. I'm fine with late nights.
Okay, so it's going to be a later in the day, a late night kind of a thing, where we have a bit more freedom on talking about these kind of things. Where the kids don't listen.
Yes, because so
about DevOps.
So we're just playing with something where we want to tell you. So the comments war stories. Yes, we're planning on war stories, but it involve a flashlight like this because I need to tell you. And then he deployed to production and it broke.
But do expect on that. Do expect a Halloween episode. We're gonna be doing Halloween episodes on horror stories from the ditches
Yes.
of IT and DevOps. So it's like a month away, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But next week, still 2 streams like normal. I'm being streaming in the morning, or
At least?
morning. Yeah, at least 2 streams in the morning with a coffee, morning tech talk like this, and then a special streaming on the rocks episode where we're gonna look at what DevOps questions would we like to ask people, and feel free to come in. Drinking whiskey basically. We're gonna drink.
Max Payne.
Yeah,
You summed it up perfectly. I've every show that we did there, I showed you which whiskey I was drinking as well.
Yeah. So yeah, those kind of things. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been so fun discussing this with all the people on chat. Thank you, and please do join that again. Make sure to hit the follow buttons and all the things, and buy the merch. And there's no merch.
And just the last thing, you can actually get this on YouTube. We have got a named channel now, so let me quickly pop that on the screen because that's useful. We finally had enough people to actually name our channel.
Yes.
And you're going to find this. Wait, sorry, I have to use it capitalized, otherwise you don't get the joke.
We are Central European time. Cobus is South African time, but it's in the same time zone as of now. So GMT +1.
Cool, and there we go. We'll pop it on screen in a second. Boom. That is where you can find us on YouTube as well, if you want.
And we'll share the Spotify channel and the podcast link as soon as we record a podcast, because we need to record a podcast before it's going to be available on Spotify. But we'll handle that. So
we will figure these things out.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. And I wish you an amazing weekend. And don't work too much today. Have a lovely, restful weekend.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
And I will hit the end broadcast button now. Bye.